Chapter 2. Virtuous Woman of Grace. Is it the grace of God that helps those who do everything that lies within their power to achieve that which is beyond their power? Abraham J. Heskell. Mary Magdalene, out of whom Jesus had cast 7 devils, Luke 8:2, was ever grateful to him for her freedom and deliverance. She was one of the women close to the cross at the crucifixion, as shown in Matthews 27:55-56. And many women were there beholding afar off, which followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering unto him, among which was Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's children. Can you imagine a woman who had 7 devils in her? The torment, the evil, the constant badgering of the mind she must have felt are inconceivable. For a woman with no devils, a woman in her right mind sometimes battles spirits and things that bother her. But to be controlled by 7 devils, not to be in control of your own mind, must have been a horrendous thing. To get up in the morning and not have a good purpose, and to be subjected to the thoughts of a controlling evil, are terrible things. She was a woman who was in total bondage, with chains on her mind. Then Jesus came. That was the day of change. He saw what she was and knew what she could be if set free from the domination of demonic forces. So he spoke to the demons and cast them out of her, and she was set free. It was an incredible deliverance. What a glorious day for her. What freedom, what liberation filled her being. She joined the crowd that followed Jesus and his disciples, and became one of the women who ministered to the needs of the group. She went from living a life of waste to one of grace. The change was outstanding. People who knew her experienced a shock when they saw the transformation of her countenance. She now was happy and free, instead of being controlled by the evil powers that before had worked through her. Mary Magdalene could never forget what Jesus did for her. Not only was she at the cross, but she was also at the place of resurrection, as stated in Matthew 28:1. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. The old Mary Magdalene was gone. The anguish, the pain, the helplessness that was within her, the demonic spirits that had controlled were gone. Having risen in the morning, seeing no light of hope ahead, but one only badgering of evil forces, she now had deliverance and freedom that caused a radiant glow to beautify once pinched face. Jesus did this for her. He set her free to become the woman she was created to be. This woman who broke the alabaster was filled with love for the Master. The radiance of his grace extended itself to her, and as she had received forgiveness, love, and understanding from him, the glory radiated in her soul, and she became a radiant woman. Not externally methods, but an inward transformation happened because of her encounter with Jesus Christ. The alabaster, Mark 14. The story recorded in John 12:1-8 took place in the house of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Mary anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house filled with the odor of the ointment. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. John 12:3. The story recorded in Mark 14:3-9 is another rendition of an unnamed woman. It is assumed that this woman was one of those whom Jesus had delivered from evil spirits. She, because of the heartbreak of her life, and now the cleansing, was filled with love and thanksgiving to Jesus. Therefore, she probably would not have broken the alabaster box until first she was broken. The breaking of her changed way of thinking and her way of doing things. She did something she had never done before. It shocked those who were in the room with her. There were murmurings and accusations against her. It was a moment of history. No one knew how to deal with an astonishing occasion. When Jesus sensed the impact of the moment, so much he said, "Wherever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of, for a memorial to her." Mark 14:9. She went beyond the ordinary, forged into new territories, and did something that was unusual, even breaking all traditions. Her own breaking entered into her own life unannounced. It was nothing she had planned. It came unexpectedly. The one who had set her free had given her new hope, and now was going to die. This was very traumatic. Her world was shattered and torn apart. Because of this awareness of his coming death, she took her rarest and most costly treasure, anointed his feet, and then wiped his feet with her hair. Now she was kneeling at the feet of the pure Christ, pouring out her love and thankfulness to him. Whereas before she was a woman who had no meaning in life, unhappy and bound, she became a radiant woman of grace because of his forgiving power. When the woman broke the alabaster box and let the countenance be poured over Jesus, the disciples were greatly displeased and began to speak indignantly against her. Jesus asked, "Why trouble ye the woman?" He let them know that he knew they were trying to vex, annoy, and embarrass her. They were finding fault with her, trying to make her uncomfortable, as if she did not belong in the position that she has assumed before Jesus. But Jesus spoke in her defense. He saw into all their hearts. Her heart was filled with pure praise, honor, and respect toward Jesus. Their hearts were hypocritical, jealous, and carnal. As they censored her, Jesus rebuked them. And they criticized her. Jesus defended her. When they embarrassed her and make her feel useless and unnecessary, Jesus commanded her and said her actions would be spoken of as long as the gospel was preached. 2,000 years have passed since the moment of her breaking, and she's still being talked about, but now not with sincere rebuke, but with respect and desire to be like her. Grace lifts. Jesus lifts people as declared in John 12:32. And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. He acts as a magnet, drawing all kinds of people to him, from all walks of life, from all countries, tribes, and tongues. Jesus lifts heavy burdens of sins and lets us feel light as a feather. When we come into his kingdom, he brings us from darkness into marvelous light. Who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins. Colossians 1:13-14. Alexander Maclaren, one of Great Britain's notable and famous preachers from 1858 through 1903, once wrote, "What God does with poor weak creatures like us, when he lifts up our weaknesses and replenishes our weariness, pouring oil and wine into our wounds and a cordial into our lips, and sending us with the joy of pardon upon our road again. That is a greater thing than when he rose Neptune in his mighty orbit round the central sun, or opposed with unwearied arms from cycle to cycle the circle of the earth." I met a sweet lady at a ladies' retreat the summer of 2003 in Pensacola, Florida. She had helped prepare the food that was served to the ministers and their wives after service Sunday night. I noticed her because of her radiance. After I was introduced to her and spoke with her, she produced 2 pictures for me to see. She called them her before and after photos. The difference was remarkable. She said, "This is before I met Jesus. This one is after he filled me with his spirit." The hardness that had characterized her face was replaced with a soft look of peace. Jesus had lifted her burden of sin and taken away the pain of her old life. And instead of remaining a victim of the wages of sin, she became a victor through the saving grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Transformed into a radiant Christian, she is a testimony of his power. An immense electromagnet was built by an industrial corporation in order to save waste pieces of iron and steel. It was placed on a flat car and sent over the tracks to run through shops and foundries, and covered acres of yard in every direction. The results were astonishing. When the crane that supported the magnet was swung out and the electric current turned on, the magnet drew pieces of metal from the piles of dust and rubbish that proved to be the missing parts of machines long since given over for lost. Elsewhere, the ground was seen to swell and crack, and after the earth had been loosened with pick and shovel, The magnet drew out the buried mistakes that workmen had hurriedly concealed from the eyes of the foremen and superintendents. Even the insignificant and apparently worthless sparks from the chimneys and rust flakes from the pig iron were gathered up by the magnet and restored to usefulness. Just so does God's magnet, Jesus Christ, gather to himself from the waste heaps of humanity and restore to useful service those who have been missing from their rightful places in home, society, and church. Those whose former lives have been woefully mistakes, and those who have come to think of themselves as too insignificant to be any use in the complex life of today. No one is beyond the uplifting power of Jesus. He still draws all kinds of men and women unto himself. This lifting power is demonstrated in the story of the woman taken in adultery. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman taken in adultery to Jesus and asked him a question to tempt him. They say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses and the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? John 8:4-5. I've often thought, and I often heard asked, where was the man involved with this woman? Jesus did not speak to them. He stooped with his finger and wrote on the ground, as if he had not heard them. But they kept asking him, so he asked them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. John 8:7. When he continued writing on the ground, some have conjectured that Jesus was writing their sins. His answers and his actions diffused the whole situation. And they which heard him, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. John 8:9. Those men did not care as much about the woman's plight as they did the effort to set a trap for Jesus. They were corrupt, religious leaders who could not see he was the Messiah. They had all read about in the scriptures. All they could see was that he was a threat to their authority and places of importance. After they had all gone, Jesus said, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Have no man condemned thee? John 8:10. She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. John 8:11. She received grace and mercy, and her life was changed. She became a radiant woman of God's grace and a follower of Christ. Gracious woman. The opposite of gracious would be described in the following scriptures. Proverbs 19:13. The countenance of a wife are a continual dropping. A quarrelsome wife is like the constant dripping of a leaky roof. NIV. Proverbs 21:9. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. Better to live alone in a tumble-down shack than share a mansion with a nagging spouse. Message Bible. 21:19 of Proverbs. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a countenance and an angry woman. Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. NIV. Women are instructed how to be gracious in 1 Timothy 3:11. Even so must their wives be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. An elegant woman is a gracious woman. She is gracious at all times. In her impatience, she will not resort to shoving others out of her way in a crowded train. It doesn't matter if she looks elegant and speaks the part. She is not truly elegant if she is not considerate as well. Love others, value and esteem others. Treat everyone the same, regardless of social status, looks, speech, and education. Do not save your best manners for certain people only. Genuinely care and put others first, instead of telling people about yourself. Listen to others and let them talk about themselves. Eunice Leong, elegantwoman.org. Proverbs 11:16 states, A gracious woman retaineth honor. When Jesus gives grace to women, there is an inward change in them. They become as described in Psalms 45:13. The king's daughter is all glorious within. The grace is all within. The beauty that God gives starts on the inside, and its radiance actually changes the outward appearance. The sparkle in the eye, a warm smile, a radiant feminine manner, and a gentle spirit mean more than the external features. Everyone has seen women with beautiful features who were cold, sour, unkind, and unhappy. On the other hand, there are women who are not outstandingly pretty, but they are beautiful with an inward radiance. The woman of grace walks with confidence, kindness, and mercy. Proverbs 31:10 speaks about the virtuous woman. Who is a woman of grace? Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The following list sums up her qualities in the language of today. She is good, does good to all. She seeks knowledge and the best things for her family. She works willingly. She shops well, does not waste. She cooks well. She's a businesswoman. She has initiative. She knows how to get the job done. She's a strong woman. She's well prepared and organized. She's industrious. She helps the poor and is kind. She's well dressed, not sloppy, but modest. She has inner strength. She is honorable in all things. She is wise. She speaks with honor and kindness. She is not lazy. She reverence God. The reward of all of this is given in Proverbs 31:28 through 31. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Virtue secures its own success. Demosthenes. A virtuous woman is a good woman who has been touched by God. He lives in her so that she can be good, live righteously and honorably, and remain more pure and honest. She is a radiant woman of grace. When she walks into a room, the atmosphere is altered for the better. There's a presence about her, a confidence that comes from living with a God's conscience. Her walk, her talk, her mannerisms are all touched by His goodness. It is apparent to all who see her that she has taken time to be in His presence and learn of Him. The glow is there. She glows. The glow is there on her face, touched by His wonderful grace. She walks with quiet and confidence, no longer anxious and tense. She glows with the radiant beauty. A love it is not just a duty, to sit in His presence divine. She is learning that He is mine. Jesus has become her master and friend. She has become freed from the bondage of sin, shining with radiance for all to see, a receiver of His abundant mercy. She radiates kindness and compassion, caring for others in her passion, fragrant with love as a beautiful rose. Wherever she goes, she glows. Joy L. Haney.